Right now, your mind may be reaching for threads you cannot quite catch, tracing the patterns of a day that has already slipped through your fingers. Perhaps you are lying in the dark, feeling the weight of a loom that never stops turning, convinced that if you just weave hard enough, the future will finally be safe. It is a specific kind of exhaustion, this need to keep the shuttle flying back and forth, because somewhere inside you believe that if the weaving ever slows, the cold mist of uncertainty will rush in and settle over everything you have built. You are not broken for feeling this. You are not failing because your mind keeps pulling at the frayed edges of the day, looking for loose ends that might unravel your sense of self. It is simply that you have been working with a tool meant for survival, using it in the quiet hours where only rest belongs. The room around you is cooling and the air feels still, but inside your chest there is a restless vibration like the steady, frantic clicking of wood against wood. You have likely been carrying this rhythm for a long time, so long that you might not even notice how hard you are gripping the frame. But tonight, we are going to set the shuttle down. There is nothing in this space that requires your mastery. The tapestry of your life does not need you to oversee its design while you sleep. The mist is coming, and it is entirely harmless. It is not an intruder, but a visitor, and we will learn how to let it move through the gaps in your frame without feeling as though you have lost your way. Maybe you came here because you are tired of performing for your own peace of mind. You have been told that to be calm, you must be productive, that to be whole, you must be polished. But the paradox of the heart is often the inverse of what we expect. Peace does not arrive because you successfully weave a wall against the world. It arrives when you realize that the wall was the very thing blocking the breeze. Your suffering is not found in the fact that the mist exists, but in the way you have turned your life into a defense against it. You do not have to defeat your overthinking to find rest. You only have to stop treating every thought as a command to keep weaving. If it feels right, let your hands relax, letting them fall away from the imaginary frame you have been holding. You do not need to check on the progress of your worries, and you do not need to ensure that everything is in order. The threads of your life are strong enough to hold their own shape without your constant, vigilant attention. You can allow the tension in your shoulders to dissolve, just as the evening shadows soften the corners of your room. There is no performance required in this darkness. You are not here to resolve the past or draft the future. You are here to remember what it feels like to simply be beneath the constant activity of your own mind. Think of your awareness as a vast, high mountain meadow, open and wide. Your thoughts are like the threads you have been carrying, colorful and intricate, but they are heavy when held all at once. Tonight, you can simply release the shuttle. You can watch as the threads drift away, dissolving into the cool mountain air until the loom stands empty and still. You are not losing your identity by letting go. You are simply returning to the space that existed before the weaving began. You have spent so long identifying with the builder of the tapestry that you have forgotten you are also the meadow that holds the entire scene. The weaver is only a small part of who you are. The mist does not erase the mountain, and it does not erase you. It only changes the way the landscape looks for a little while, softening the sharp edges and bringing a quiet, damp peace to the ground. You are safe enough to let this softness come. You are safe enough to stop managing the world for just a few hours. If you find your mind wandering back to the loom, if you feel the old reflexive urge to pick up the shuttle and start mending a mistake from this morning. That is perfectly fine. You do not need to punish yourself for the habit. Just notice the urge. See the hand reaching out, and then, with a gentleness you would offer to a tired child, simply let the hand rest again. You do not need to chase the thoughts away. You do not need to force your mind into a void. You only need to notice that you are the one watching the threads, and that the watcher is always calm, always present, and always untouched by the patterns you weave. There is a deep, ancient wisdom in the idea of the unfinished. We spend our lives trying to reach a state of completion, believing that if we could just get everything right, we would finally be allowed to stop. But life is an unfolding process that never truly settles into a final form. The loom is always moving. The mist is always shifting. When you embrace the unfinished nature of your own life, you stop carrying the heavy burden of trying to be a final product. You are allowed to be a work in progress. You are allowed to be a knot, a snag, or a loose thread, because the tapestry is not what makes you worthy of rest. As you lie here, feel the weight of your body anchoring you to the earth. The floor beneath you, the bed beneath you, they are holding you in place. You do not have to hold yourself up. You do not have to maintain the structure of your life tonight. The world will keep turning without your constant oversight. The sun will rise in its own time, and the day will offer its own threads. But right now, there is only this slow, descending quiet. Maybe you are wondering if you can truly let go, if you can truly afford to stop the work. But look at how much energy you have been spending just to stay alert to the danger of the mist. That energy is yours to reclaim. It is the fuel for your rest. You have been burning it like a lantern in a high wind, trying to keep the flame steady when the wind is only asking you to let it be. Tonight, let the flame be whatever it needs to be. You are not here to win a struggle against your own mind. You are here to rest in the sanctuary of your own being, where no weaving is necessary and no safety needs to be earned. If the room feels a little too quiet, or if the silence brings up a sense of loneliness, allow that to be there too. Loneliness is just a thread that has become separated from the main pattern. You can hold it in your awareness. You can look at it with curiosity. But you do not have to weave it into a story about who you are. It is just a feeling, a visitor passing through the meadow. You are the space that allows it to appear, and you are the space that remains when it leaves. There is no place you need to go from here. There is no destination you need to reach before the morning. You are already exactly where your life has led you, and that is a place of profound, quiet possibility. You are not a machine for fixing problems. You are a living, breathing part of the universe, and you are entitled to the stillness of the night. So, let your breath be the only rhythm that matters now. Let the rise and fall of your chest be the only pattern you follow. You are not building anything tonight. You are only arriving in a village tucked deep within the folds of a high mountain range. There lived a woman named Elara, who was known for the extraordinary precision of her work. She was a weaver of tapestries, and her hands were always occupied with the shuttle, passing back and forth across the cedar loom that sat in the center of her small, dimly lit hut. The winters in these mountains were brutal, characterized by a thick, persistent mist that rolled down from the peaks, obscuring the path and muffling the sound of the world outside. Elara lived in constant fear of this mist. She believed that if she could weave a tapestry tight enough, fine enough, and perfect enough, she could create a barrier in her doorway that would hold back the cold dampness. She worked from the first light of dawn until the oil lamp sputtered and died in the deep night, her fingers moving with a rhythmic, frantic speed. Each thread she chose was carefully inspected for flaws. If a strand felt brittle, she discarded it. If a pattern she had designed showed a slight inconsistency, she would unpick the entire section, her jaw tight, her focus narrow and sharp. She was not weaving for beauty. She was weaving for survival, convinced that the safety of her hut depended entirely on the thickness of her fabric. One particularly biting evening, when the mist was pressing hard against the window panes like a living grey hand, an elderly traveller arrived at her threshold. He was a man who walked with a staff of dark, polished wood and wore a simple cloak that seemed to be woven from the very same grey mist that terrified Elara. He did not ask for shelter, but he stood by the door, watching her work. Elara did not look up, but she could feel the weight of his presence. Her fingers moved faster, the shuttle clicking against the loom frame with a sharp, insistent sound. She was nearly finished, with a new panel, a dense, heavy section of wool and silk that she intended to hang over the frame of the door to seal out the draft. The traveller waited until she reached the end of a long row. The tension on the threads pulled to the very limit of what they could withstand. Then he spoke, his voice barely rising above the low howl of the wind outside. He asked her if she had ever wondered what the room would feel like if she simply let the air pass through her work. Elara stopped, her hands hovering over the shuttle. The silence in the hut suddenly feeling heavier than the noise of the loom. She looked at the man, irritation pricking at her skin, and told him that if the air passed through, the cold would come with it. She said that her entire life was dedicated to preventing that exact thing, that she was building a shield for her own warmth. The man leaned against his staff and looked around the small, cramped room. He did not argue with her. He simply reached into the folds of his cloak and pulled out a small, circular wooden ring. It was a simple, unfinished frame, no larger than a child's palm, sanded smooth by years of touch. He placed the ring on the table next to her loom and asked her to weave a single, small square of fabric. Across it, he said, he wanted to see the quality of her skill on a scale that required no effort. Elara, wanting to prove the worth of her labour, took the ring. She quickly wove a dense, intricate grid of thread, pulling each stitch until it was taut and unyielding. It was perfect. She handed it back to him, expecting praise for her discipline. The traveller held the ring up to the faint light of the oil lamp, turning it slowly. Then, without a word of warning, he reached out and touched the center of her perfect weave with his thumb. He did not rip it, and he did not break it. He simply pushed his thumb against the center, applying a gentle, steady pressure that forced the tightly woven threads to slide. The grid distorted. The perfection she had labored over was gone in an instant. Elara gasped, reaching for the ring as if to save her work. But the traveller held it, just out of reach. He asked her to look at the threads. They were not broken, they were merely displaced. By holding them so tightly in their original position, she had left no room for them to move. And so, when the pressure came, they had no choice but to warp. He set the ring down on the table between them and suggested that perhaps the cold she was so afraid of was not the mist outside, but the rigid, unyielding nature of the loom itself. He told her that she was spending her life trying to weave a wall against the changing seasons. but that even the most perfect wall could not stop the wind from moving through the mountains. He stood up, adjusted his cloak, and walked toward the door. As he opened it, a billow of white, cold mist rushed into the room, swirling around Ilara's ankles and touching the tapestry she was currently weaving. She reached out to stop it, to push it back with her hands, but the man simply smiled and stepped out into the night, leaving the door standing wide open. Ilara sat alone in the center of her hut, the cold air rushing in and dancing through the loose threads of her loom. She felt a sudden, sharp ache in her hands, a fatigue that seemed to reach all the way into her bones. She looked at the shuttle, the wooden tool she had gripped for so many years. It suddenly felt heavy, clunky, and unnecessary. She looked at the tapestry, the massive, dense project she had been perfecting for months. It looked less like a shield and more like a cage. For the first time in her life, she did not immediately reach to fix the tension. She did not tighten the strings. She did not scold herself for the air that was now cooling the room. She simply sat there, watching the mist drift through the threads, noting how it transformed the appearance of the fabric, turning it into something softer, something lighter. The silence that followed. The traveler's departure was not empty. It was filled with the subtle, shifting sounds of the mountain night. Ilara watched as the mist settled onto the threads, clinging to them like tiny, silver beads of water. The threads were not being ruined. They were just holding the moisture of the world. She found that her breath, which had been shallow and fast for as long as she could remember, began to slow down. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, she did not feel the need to account for it, or to make it into a pattern, or to use it to fuel more work. She was just a woman in a room with the wind moving around her. You might recognize this feeling, this urge to keep the loom perfectly calibrated. You have been weaving your own barriers, haven't you? You have spent so much energy creating a life that is flawless, a version of yourself that is always ready, always prepared, and always defended against the sudden chill of uncertainty. You have been afraid that if you relax your grip, the mist of the unknown will overwhelm you, that you will lose your shape, and that the order you have built will collapse into chaos. But notice what happened when the traveler pushed on the threads. They didn't break, they simply moved. There is a flexibility in your own life that you have forgotten how to trust. You have been so focused on the density of the barrier that you have neglected the nature of the mist. The mist is not an intruder. It is just the weather of existence. It is the natural, inevitable way that life moves through the spaces you have left open. You do not have to block it. You do not have to fight it. You only have to stop weaving so tightly that you have no room left to breathe. Look at your own hands. They are likely still coiled in the shape of the shuttle. Even now, as you lie in the dark, you can let them go. You can let them lie flat against the sheets. You can let the tension drain out, slowly from the wrists, up through the arms, and into the space between your shoulder blades. The loom will still be there in the morning. The work of your life is not going to vanish because you take a few hours to let the air pass through. You are not a wall. You are not a barrier. You are the space where the weaving happens, and that space is far larger, far more capable, and far more resilient than the pattern you are currently trying to maintain. As you listen, feel the air in the room around you. Feel the way it moves, without effort, without judgment, and without needing to be directed. It is touching your skin, it is filling the room, and it is filling your lungs. It is already here. You have been trying to keep it out, But you can stop now. You can let the windows of your mind be wide open to the night. The struggle of the weaver is not a foreign tale. It is the story of how you have learned to navigate the world. You have looked at the uncertainties of life, the cold mist that rolls in without asking for permission, and you have decided that the only way to survive is to build a wall against it. You have become a master of tension. You have pulled the threads of your own life so tight that they have stopped being pliable. They have become rigid, unyielding, and in that rigidity, you have lost the ability to feel the natural, flowing movement of your own existence. The Buddhist teaching is not asking you to abandon your loom. It is not suggesting that you leave the hut empty or that you stop living your life. It is showing you something much quieter and perhaps much more difficult. It is suggesting that the suffering you feel is not caused by the mist that enters the room. The suffering is caused by the way you pull on the thread. The moment the cold air touches your skin, you see a conflict at work, a silence in a relationship, or a change in your plans, and you immediately reach for the shuttle. You tighten your jaw. You sharpen your focus. You try to weave a solution, a defense, or a narrative that will explain away the discomfort. You believe that if you just weave hard enough, if you just perfect the pattern of your reaction, you will finally reach a state of safety. But the mist does not care about the density of your fabric. The mist simply moves where it needs to move. When you look at your own life, you might see where you have been overweaving. You have been adding extra layers of concern to every conversation, reinforcing the edges of every decision, and polishing the surface of your own identity until it feels like armor. This armor is heavy. It keeps you from feeling the natural warmth of your own breath. It keeps you from feeling the kindness of the people around you, because you are too busy watching the threads, ensuring they do not slip, ensuring they do not fray. You have mistaken the tension of your own mind for the strength of your own character. But strength is not the same as tightness. True strength is the capacity to remain open, even when the wind is blowing. It is the ability to hold the shuttle without needing to control every single movement of the thread. Think about the way the traveler touched the ring. He did not break the threads. He simply pushed them. He showed that when you are already pulled to the limit of your capacity, any pressure at all becomes a catastrophe. If you were flexible, if you allowed for a little bit of slack in your life, the pressures of the day would not warp your sense of self. They would simply ripple through, move across the fabric, and settle. You have spent so much energy trying to stop the ripples. You have tried to be the person who is never bothered, the person who is never confused, and the person who is never caught off guard. You have turned your identity into a static, unchanging tapestry. But life is not a fixed image. It is an ongoing, shifting process. When you try to make your identity a final, completed thing, you are actually fighting against the reality of who you are. You are alive. You are changing. You are a vessel for the experience of being human, and that experience includes confusion, sadness, and the occasional feeling of being overwhelmed. This is where the idea of attachment becomes so visible in your own life. Attachment is the hand that refuses to let go of the shuttle. It is the deep, underlying belief that if you stop weaving, you will cease to be. But you are not the tapestry. You are the space where the weaving occurs. You are the consciousness that notices the shuttle moving. You are the one who knows when the threads are tight, and you are the one who has the power to loosen them. This does not mean you have to be cold. It does not mean you stop loving the people in your life. or that you stop pursuing your goals. It simply means you stop turning your care into a prison. You can be dedicated to your work without being consumed by the fear of failure. You can be committed to your relationships without needing to control every interaction. You can be present in your own life without needing to manage the weather. The second wound we suffer is the one we inflict upon ourselves after the first event has occurred. If someone says something that hurts you, that is the first event. It is a reality. It has happened. But the suffering does not stop there. The mind immediately begins to weave. It analyzes what they meant. It rehearses what you should have said. It builds a case against the person or against yourself to justify the pain. It weaves a thick, heavy blanket of justification and blame, and it wraps itself in that blanket day after day until it can no longer see the original event clearly. You are not responding to the hurt anymore. You are responding to the intricate, heavy tapestry you have woven out of the hurt. If you can learn to see this process as it is happening, you have already begun the practice of letting go. Letting go is not a dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime event. It is 1,000 tiny, quiet choices to put down the shuttle. It is the decision to look at the threads of your own worry and realize that you do not need to pull them any tighter. It is the decision to acknowledge the pain, to feel it, and then to allow it to be just what it is, rather than turning it into a fortress. You might be thinking that this sounds like giving up. You might fear that if you stop trying to weave the perfect life, everything will fall into disarray. But consider the alternative. You are already exhausted. You are already living with a heart that feels like it is constantly braced for impact. The safety you have been trying to create is an illusion, because the world will always be unpredictable. The mist will always arrive, regardless of how tightly you have woven your door. But if you are flexible, if you are soft, the mist is just air. It is just life. It is not an enemy to be defeated. When you feel that tightness in your chest, that familiar knot of anxiety that tells you to start weaving, try to pause. Do not fight the feeling. Do not tell yourself that you are bad for feeling it. Just notice the hand. Notice the urge to reach for the shuttle. See the way your mind is already beginning to construct the next row, the next worry, the next strategy. You do not have to obey it. You can just look at it, acknowledge that it is there, and then, with a slow, deliberate movement, let your hand fall away. It is a strange sensation, letting go. At first, it might even feel dangerous. It might feel like you are losing your grip on who you are. But underneath that fear, there is a profound sense of relief. It is the relief of a muscle that has been clenched for days finally being allowed to lengthen. It is the relief of a breath that has been held for too long, finally being allowed to release. You are just finding your natural shape. The tapestry is still there. Your life is still happening. You are still you. But you are no longer the one who has to manufacture the stillness. You are becoming the one who can rest in the movement of the air. You are becoming the one who can watch the threads without needing to force them into a pattern. There is a deep, abiding kindness in this. It is kindness toward yourself, because you are finally allowing yourself to stop the endless labor of proving your worth through the perfection of your work. You have been working so hard to protect yourself from the world, and all you have done is isolate yourself from the flow of your own life. You have been standing at the loom, back aching, fingers cramping, watching the world pass by through the gaps in your own construction. But you can step away from the frame. You can walk to the window. You can watch the mist move over the mountains without feeling that it is your responsibility to solve it. The practice of awareness is the practice of stepping back. It is the practice of moving from the one who is doing the weaving to the one who is watching the light shift in the room. When you watch, you do not lose your life. You begin to understand it. You see that the threads are not your enemies. They are just the materials of existence. They are what they are. You can work with them without being governed by them. You can live in the world without being ruled by the need to hold it all together. You might be surprised by how much life continues to function when you stop trying to govern every detail. The sun continues to rise. Your heart continues to beat. The people around you continue to move through their own days, weaving their own patterns, and you are free to join them, not as a master of the tapestry, but as a fellow human being. You can participate. You can contribute. You can be part of the whole without needing to be the one who directs the flow. This is the freedom that the traveler was pointing toward. It was not a freedom from the loom. It was a freedom from the belief that the loom was the only thing standing between you and the cold. The cold is a part of the mountain. The mist is a part of the mountain. You are a part of the mountain, and you are safe right here in the middle of the shifting, unpredictable weather of your own life. You do not need to be any different than you are right now. You do not need to be smoother or tighter or more perfect. You can be exactly as you are, with all your loose threads, with all your snags, and with all your unfinished edges. That is where the beauty is. That is where the real, living fabric of your existence resides. As you listen to the sound of your own breath, notice if your body is trying to hold on to anything. Are your shoulders held high, as if waiting for a weight to be placed upon them? Is your stomach held tight, as if defending against a blow? Let all of that fall away. You are in a place where no wall needs to be built. You are in a place where no weaving is expected of you. You are allowed to be empty for a little while. You are allowed to be still. The loom is at rest. The shuttle is silent. And for the first time, you are simply sitting in the cool, clear light of your own presence. That is more than enough. You have been carrying the weight of the world on your back, but you were never asked to carry it. You were only asked to witness it. And now you can set it down and let the quiet take the lead. Now, let us turn this understanding toward your own inner landscape. You are currently in a space where no weaving is required. And for the next few moments, you can let the shuttle simply lie upon the bench. If it feels right, close your eyes or soften your gaze until the world around you fades into a gentle, blurred silhouette. Feel the weight of your body pressing into the bed and notice the rhythm of your own chest, rising and falling without any effort of your own. You do not need to direct your breath. You do not need to make it deeper or slower. You are already breathing, and that is enough. Imagine that you are sitting before your own loom, not as a weaver trying to finish a project, but as someone who has decided to take a brief, quiet break. In your lap, there is a small wooden shuttle, the very one you have been holding all day, the one that carries the weight of your tasks, your concerns, and your unfinished business. Look at your hands as they rest upon this shuttle. Are they clenched? Is there a subtle tension in your knuckles? If you notice that you are gripping it, do not judge yourself for the habit. It is a long-standing pattern, and it has served a purpose in its own time. Simply acknowledge the grip, and then, with a slow, deliberate release, let your fingers loosen their hold. You might feel an immediate phantom urge to reach back and grasp the wood again, fearing that if you let go, the threads will tangle or the project will be ruined. This is a very natural response. It is the part of you that believes safety is found in control. When this urge arises, breathe into it. Imagine that your breath is like the cool mountain air, drifting into your chest and creating space around that tight, protective impulse. You do not have to fight the urge to hold on. You only have to witness it as if you were watching a cloud drift across a vast blue sky. It is there. It is part of the scene, but it is not the entire landscape. Now, bring to mind one specific thought that has been pulling at you today. Perhaps it is a worry about a commitment you made, a memory of a moment that felt clumsy, or a vague, nagging sense that you are falling behind. Do not try to analyze the thought. Do not try to solve the problem it presents. Just hold it in your awareness as if it were a single, loose thread. Look at its color, its texture, and its length. It is a real thread, certainly. It is part of the tapestry of your day. But notice how, when you hold it separate from the rest of the work, it is just a simple, singular thing. Imagine placing this thread onto the empty frame of your loom, not to weave it into a tight pattern, but to simply let it rest there. Watch it for a moment. Does it feel heavy? Does it feel like it needs to be pulled taut? As you observe it, allow yourself to feel the sensation of the air in the room, the way the silence holds you, and the way your own body is supported by the floor. Notice that the thread is not pulling on you. You are the one who has been pulling on the thread, and right now you are choosing to set the tension aside. If the thought tries to pull itself back into a structure, if your mind begins to build a narrative around it, saying that you must be careful or that you must not forget to address this, that is fine. Gently notice the mind at work. See it beginning to weave. Smile at the way your mind loves to organize the world into patterns. Then see if you can choose to remain the witness rather than the worker. You are the observer who sees the thread, and you are the observer who sees the impulse to weave. You do not have to follow that impulse tonight. Maybe there are other threads in your mind as well. Perhaps a thread of regret or a thread of anxiety about tomorrow. One by one, you can imagine them appearing on the frame of your loom. You do not need to sort them, and you do not need to prioritize them. You are simply clearing the bench for the evening. As each thread is placed, observe it, acknowledge its existence, and then feel the space inside your heart growing a little wider, a little cooler, and a little more still. You are not discarding these concerns forever. You are simply putting them down for a while, giving yourself the space to breathe without them. There is no danger in this emptiness. Even if the loom looks chaotic, with threads dangling and colors mixed, that is not a failure. That is the honest, unedited record of a day lived. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to be acknowledged with kindness. You have done enough work today. You have managed enough of the world. Now, the work is to let the silence enter the spaces you have created. Let the cool air of your awareness move through the loom, touching each thread, softening the sharp edges of your concerns, and turning the static tension of your day into a gentle, flowing movement. If you find that your mind has wandered off, if you have started weaving again without realizing it, do not be surprised. It is what minds do. When you catch yourself, simply return to the sensation of your own hands resting on the sheets. Feel the texture of the fabric beneath your skin. Feel the weight of your limbs, the heaviness of your legs, and the complete, grounded support of your bed. You are not a weaver, you are a person, resting in the quiet of the night, and that is a perfectly noble thing to be. The shuttle is still, the threads are resting. The air in the room is soft, and it is moving through you. Just as it moves through the mountains, you do not need to supervise this process. You do not need to guide it. You are simply existing in the middle of the night, and that existence is profound, complete, and entirely sufficient. Every time you return to this moment, you are deepening your sanctuary. Every time you let go, you are showing yourself that you are not the prisoner of your own patterns. There may be a lingering sense of guilt, a quiet voice that says you should be doing something, that you should be preparing, or that you should be more productive. Recognize this voice as just another thread. It is a common one, woven by many of us, but it is not the truth. It is a habit of the mind, conditioned by the belief that your value is tied to your output, but your value is not a project that you have to maintain. Your value is inherent, and it is present whether you are working or resting or simply breathing in the dark. Take a long, slow breath, feeling the air fill your lungs, and notice the slight, natural pause at the top of the inhale. In that pause, there is a total stillness. There is no weaving there. There is no past to hold, and no future to secure. There is only the simple, quiet awareness of your own life, suspended in the night. That is the space where you truly live. That is the space that remains when the weaving is done. You can rest there as long as you like. You can let the world blur at the edges, letting the colors of your day fade into the soft velvet dark. You are doing nothing, and in doing nothing, you are doing the most important work of all. You are returning to yourself. Years later, a different student came to the mountain, an apprentice named Kale. He was not a weaver, but a woodcarver, a man whose hands were perpetually stained with cedar dust, and whose mind was a gallery of imagined failures. He arrived at the temple with a heavy trunk filled with unfinished carvings. He had spent his youth trying to carve the perfect likeness of peace itself, believing that if he could just capture the right expression in the wood, he would finally find it within his own soul. But the wood kept cracking, or the grain would resist his chisel, and Kale would spend his nights in despair, convinced that his inability to control the material was a moral flaw. The old monk who lived at the temple was a man of few words, known for his work with the temple's stone paths. He spent his days not carving intricate figures, but simply ensuring that the stones were level and the moss was allowed to grow in the cracks. When Kale showed him his carvings, the monk did not critique the craftsmanship. He did not point out the errors or offer suggestions for improvement. He simply sat on the porch, watching the rain fall against the eaves, and asked Kale to help him move a heavy stone from the garden. The stone was buried deep in the mud, half hidden by overgrown ferns. It was an awkward, jagged thing, and it resisted every attempt Kale made to budge it. His pride flared. He gripped the stone with raw, strained muscles. His teeth gritted. His breath held tight. He saw this stone as a test of his resolve. He felt that if he could not move it, he was confirming all his own fears about his lack of control. He pulled until his hands bled, his frustration rising into a hot, bright anger. He wanted to shatter the stone, to reshape it, to force it into submission. The monk watched from the dry porch, his hands tucked into his wide sleeves. He waited until Kale collapsed, panting and shaking on the wet earth. Then the monk walked over. He did not grab the stone. He did not shout instructions. He simply sat down in the mud beside the younger man. He reached out and placed his hand against the cold, wet surface of the stone, feeling its texture, its weight, and its stubbornness. He asked Kale if he had noticed the way the stone was resting against the roots of the tree. He pointed out that the stone was not resisting Kale out of spite. It was merely locked into the shape of the earth. He told Kale that he was treating the stone as a puzzle to be solved, or a statue to be carved, but that it was simply a part of the garden. To move it, they did not need more force. They needed to understand the way it was held by the ground. Kale watched, his breath still ragged, as the monk began to dig. He did not dig aggressively. He worked with a patient, rhythmic motion, clearing the dirt away from the roots, loosening the hold of the earth. It took hours. The light began to fade, and the rain turned into a soft, steady mist. Kale found himself mirroring the movement. He slowed his hands. He stopped trying to heave the stone, and instead he began to clear the soil. With every scoop of mud, the tension in his shoulders started to dissolve. He noticed for the first time that the stone was not an opponent. It was just a part of the landscape, and his role was not to defeat it, but to work with the ground that held it. When they finally shifted the stone, it did not happen with a grand, violent effort. It tipped over as easily as a leaf falling from a branch, once the pressure was removed. That night, Kale did not go back to his hut to obsess over his unfinished carvings. He sat in the dark temple hall, his hands still caked with garden soil. He realized that he had been trying to carve his life with the same sharp, impatient tools he used. For Sada, he had been trying to force his inner peace to take a specific, perfect shape. He had been so busy chiseling away at his own flaws that he had forgotten to simply live in the garden of his own existence. He felt a profound, quiet shift in his chest. It was not a grand revelation that solved his life, but it was a crack in the old pattern. The next morning, Kale did not go to his trunk. He went to the garden. He sat by the stone they had moved and watched a small insect climb across its surface. He felt the cool air of the morning, the scent of damp pine, and the steady, unhurried beating of his own heart. He realized that the carvings in his trunk were not proof of his failure. They were just objects. They were things he had made while he was learning how to be human. He could leave them there. He did not need to perfect them. He did not need to sell them, or show them, or hide them. He could just let them be. This is the transformation you are capable of. Not in some distant, enlightened future, but in the small, quiet choices of tonight. You do not have to stop being who you are. You do not have to stop caring about your work, or your goals, or your relationships, but you can stop using them as a chisel to carve your own worth. You can stop treating your life like a block of wood that needs to be hacked into shape. You are the garden, Kale realized. You are the space where the stones are moved and the moss grows. When you feel that familiar itch to perfect your circumstances, to polish your reputation, or to force a resolution to a problem that isn't ready to be solved, remember the stone. Stop pushing against the earth. Stop gripping the chisel with white-knuckled intent. Take a breath, not because it is a meditation technique, but because your body needs the oxygen to process the reality of the moment. Feel the weight of the stone in your life. Acknowledge its reality. Then, instead of forcing it, look for the roots. Look for the underlying beliefs, the hidden pressures, the old habitual thoughts that are keeping the situation locked in place. You will find that when you stop trying to defeat your own problems, you begin to see them clearly. You see that they are just part of the landscape. They are not enemies. They are not monsters. They are just the stones of your life, and they are here to be tended, not shattered. This is the subtle, transformative shift. It is a movement from resistance to inquiry. It is a movement from the arrogance of the carver to the humility of the gardener. As you lie here, feel the space surround your body, the vast, neutral territory of the night. You are not a masterpiece waiting to be finished. You are a living thing, and your life is a process of growth, transition, and renewal. The wood may be rough, the grain may be twisted, and the stone may be heavy, but that is the beauty of it. That is the texture of human reality. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to stop carving and start breathing. Think of the way Cale stopped his work to simply sit in the rain. He did not stop being a carver, but he stopped needing to prove it to the world. He stopped needing to make his carvings perfect in order to feel safe. You can do the same. You can stop needing your days to be perfect in order to feel whole. You can stop needing your mind to be silent in order to feel at peace. The peace is already here, hidden in the spaces between the thoughts, waiting for you to stop the hammering and simply listen to the quiet. If a worry arises, if a thought says that you are losing your edge, or that you are becoming lazy, or that you will regret this lack of action tomorrow, watch it without picking it up. Do not argue with it. Do not try to carve it into something else. Just notice it. See that it is a habit of the mind, a way of protecting you that is no longer needed. Thank the thought for its service, and then watch it drift away like the mist in the mountains. You are not losing anything by setting down your tools. You are gaining the ability to experience the garden as it is, rather than as you wish it to be. The temple of your own being is a place of profound, quiet sanctuary. It is a place where you are always welcomed, always enough, and always at home. The work will wait for you. But the peace is only available now in this single suspended moment. So let your hands be open. Let your heart be soft. Let the garden be exactly as it is, with its stones and its roots and its quiet, steady growth. You are safe enough to let the carving end for the night. You are safe enough to be simply and completely yourself. You have likely noticed how the mind develops a taste for its own turbulence. It begins to treat anxiety as a form of insurance, believing that if it replays the mistakes of the past or previews the dangers of the future, it is somehow building a protective wall. This is the mechanism of the weaver, the constant motion of the shuttle that feels like progress, but is actually just the creation of a dense, heavy cage. You have been told, perhaps by the world or by the quiet voices of your own doubt, that you must be the architect of your own safety. You have been told that if you are not actively managing your concerns, you are vulnerable, but this is the fundamental miscalculation of the heart. The first kind of pain is the arrival of the mist. It is the inevitable change in your circumstances. The moments where you feel loss, confusion, or a sudden chill in the air. This is the reality of being alive. It is the weather of existence, and it touches us all, regardless of how tightly we weave our tapestries. But the second kind of pain, the kind that keeps you awake in the dark, is the one you add yourself. It is the layer of judgment, the layer of blame, and the layer of frantic control that you drape over the original experience. When the mist arrives, you do not simply feel the cold. You immediately begin to tell yourself that you are wrong for feeling it, that you should have prevented it, or that it is a sign of your own inadequacy. This secondary layer is where the suffering lives. It is a form of self-judgment that behaves like a broken loom, continuously snagging the thread and creating knots that become harder to untangle the longer they are left. You are not just dealing with the situation at hand. You are dealing with the internal monologue that insists you should be different, that you should be smoother, that you should be able to master the weather of your own life. This struggle is what drains you. It is what makes the quiet hours of the night feel like a battleground rather than a sanctuary. Think of it this way. If you are walking through the woods and it begins to rain, you are going to get wet. That is the nature of the storm. But if, while you are getting wet, you also stand there and scream at yourself for not bringing an umbrella, or if you lament that you are the only person on earth who ever gets caught in the rain, that is where the true exhaustion begins. The rain is the first pain. The internal protest against the rain is the second. And it is this protest that keeps you from finding the grace to simply step under a tree or enjoy the freshness of the air. You have been using shame as a tool to fix your life, believing that if you are hard enough on yourself, you will eventually become bulletproof. But shame does not build a shield. It only creates more fragmentation. Every time you judge yourself for being human, you are pulling a thread in your own fabric, making it thinner and more fragile. You are trying to weave a version of yourself that is immune to the ups and downs of human experience. And when you inevitably find that you are not, you turn that disappointment into a weapon. You use it to punish yourself, which only adds to the heavy, claustrophobic atmosphere of your mind. The Buddhist insight is not that you should stop wanting things to go well. It is that you should stop tying your value to the outcome. You are not the tapestry. You are the space where the tapestry exists. When you begin to realize this, you see that the mistakes, the worries, and the moments of confusion are not stains on your record. They are simply events, and they have no power to alter the fundamental nature of who you are. The mountain is still the mountain, even when the mist obscures it. The meadow is still the meadow, even when the winter frost covers the grass. You have been turning your pain into an identity. You have been saying, I am a worried person, or I am a person who always fails at this, or I am a person who has to work twice as hard just to feel safe. By naming these things as if they were your core self, you have given them a weight they do not deserve. They are not who you are. They are just patterns you have practiced for a long time. They are habits of the mind, and like all habits, they can be unlearned, not by fighting them, but by noticing them with a clear, steady gaze. When you feel that urge to fix yourself, that sudden impulse to pick up the shuttle and start mending a perceived flaw, try to look at the urge itself. Do not follow it. Do not execute the command to fix. Just sit with the feeling of the urge. See how it manifests in the body. Perhaps it is a tightening in the chest, a shallow rhythm in the breath, or a restless energy in your fingers. That is the mechanism of the second pain. It is the ego's way of saying it needs to be in charge. But you do not have to give it control. You can look at that urge and say, I see you, and you are not the truth. This is where the practice of letting go becomes so essential. It is not about letting go of your goals, or your dreams, or your responsibilities. It is about letting go of the need for the world to look a certain way before you are allowed to be at peace. You are allowed to be at peace right now, in the middle of your challenges, in the middle of your uncertainties, and in the middle of your own unfinished work. Peace is not the absence of the mist. Peace is the ability to sit in the center of it and know that you are safe. You have been trying to earn your rest by working until you are too tired to think. But that is not rest. That is just temporary depletion. True rest is a state of being that you can access whenever you remember to release your grip. It is the act of stepping back from the loom and seeing the entire room, the entire mountain, and the entire night. When you see the full picture, you see that the thread you were so worried about was only a tiny, inconsequential part of the whole. You see that the mistake you made was just a ripple on the surface of the water, and that the water itself remains deep, clear, and perfectly still. This clarity is your birthright. It is not something you have to develop through a long, arduous process of self-improvement. It is something you have been carrying all along, buried under the layers of your own weaving. When you stop adding the second layer of suffering, the first layer becomes much easier to hold. You can look at your pain and say, "This is difficult, and I am here with it. I do not need to solve it tonight. I do not need to turn it into a story about who I am. I can just be with the difficulty, and that is a profound act of self-compassion." Think about the way you treat someone you love when they are suffering. You do not tell them they are failing because they are sad. You do not tell them they must fix the situation immediately, or else they are worthless. You offer them space. You offer them kindness. You sit with them, and your presence is enough to help them bear the weight of their own experience. Why is it so difficult to offer this same kindness to yourself? Why have you decided that you are the only one who must be perfect, the only one who must be invulnerable, the only one who must weave a perfect life? You can start to shift this relationship tonight. You can start by simply acknowledging your own humanity. When a thought of self-judgment arises, instead of trying to argue with it or suppress it, acknowledge that it is a common human voice, a relic of a time when you thought you needed to be perfect to survive. But you are safe now. You are in a place of rest. You can let that voice speak, and you can choose not to listen. You can simply let it pass by, like the wind moving through the open door of the hut, without needing to shut the door or chase the wind away. The transformation you are experiencing is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more of who you are, without the artificial weight of your own resistance. It is the process of shedding the armor that has been keeping you small, frightened, and isolated. It is the process of remembering that you are part of the vast, interconnected web of life, and that you do not have to carry the burden of the entire web on your own shoulders. The web will hold you if you let it. The garden will sustain you if you stop trying to force the harvest. As you lie here, feel the boundary between your skin and the air. That boundary is not a wall. It is an invitation to meet the world. Everything that happens tonight, every sound, every sensation, every thought that enters your mind is an opportunity to practice this new, softer way of being. You are not a project. You are not a product. You are a living expression of the universe, and you are worthy of rest, regardless of what you have done or what you have left undone. The loom can wait, the weaving can pause, the mist can settle where it needs to. You are free to simply close your eyes, to breathe, and to inhabit the quiet space that has been waiting for you all along. This understanding is not meant to stay behind in the mountains of your imagination. It is designed for the moments when you are sitting on the edge of your bed at midnight, watching the digital glow of your phone and waiting for a word that feels like validation. It is for the afternoon, when you are standing in a crowded room, performing a version of yourself that feels hollow, or for the quiet drive home, when the silence of the car becomes a mirror for every regret you have accumulated throughout the day. These are the moments where the loom starts clicking again. These are the moments when you feel the old reflexive pull of the shuttle, demanding that you fix the fabric, that you tighten the seams, that you weave a better story for yourself to inhabit. When you find yourself replaying a conversation from hours ago, obsessing over a tone of voice or a missed opportunity, you are essentially trying to reweave the past. You are sitting at the loom in the middle of the night, trying to take apart a row that is already finished and replace it with something more flattering, but the past is a static pattern. It is not something you can undo. When you notice this happening, try to pause. Do not reach for the shuttle. Do not try to resolve the memory. Just acknowledge the urge to fix it. See the movement of your mind as it starts to pull at the loose threads of the day. Acknowledge that you are currently trying to live in a time that no longer exists. Then take a breath and feel the weight of your body where it sits. You are here in the present, and the present is the only place where the loom has any real potential. Perhaps you feel as though you are falling behind, as if your life is a project that is not moving fast enough, or as if others are weaving intricate, beautiful designs while your own hands are empty and shaking. This is a common knot, a place where many of us get snagged. We compare our own messy, unfinished work to the public displays of other people, forgetting that they are also struggling with their own tensions, their own fears, and their own hidden looms. You are not meant to be a machine of productivity. You are not meant to be a weaver who never falters and never drops a stitch. When you feel that surge of comparison, that sharp, stinging need to be something else, see it for what it is. It is just another thread, a very thin, very brittle thread of doubt. You do not have to weave it in. You can let it lie on the floor. You can step over it. You might be familiar with the habit of checking for reassurance, looking for a sign that you are doing it right, or that you are accepted, or that you are safe. Maybe you check your messages, or scroll through the lives of others, looking for a pattern that matches your own. This is the shuttle reaching out to touch the work of a neighbor, hoping to find a hint of how to proceed. But every weaver has a different rhythm. Every life has a different set of materials. The only person you can truly know is yourself, and you are only knowable when you are not trying to perform for an audience. If you find yourself reaching for that external validation, notice the movement of your hand. Notice the desire. Then, bring your awareness back to the center of your own chest. Can you find enough warmth there without waiting for a signal from the outside? Can you trust that the current state of your own heart is enough for now? We often feel guilty when we choose to, as if rest is a reward that must be earned through the complete and utter exhaustion of our resources. We believe that we are only allowed to stop when the work is finished. But as we have explored, the work is never finished. There is always another row. There is always more to be done. If you wait for the tapestry to be complete before you allow yourself to lie down, you will never sleep. You will be weaving until the end of your days. Your fingers worn to the bone, your eyes searching for a perfection that exists only as a concept in your own mind. Giving yourself permission to rest is not an act of negligence. It is an act of deep, radical honesty. It is an admission that you are a human being, not a tool, and that your value is not tied to the output of your hands. When you lie down and the mind starts to list the things you have forgotten, or the things you must attend to in the morning, treat these thoughts as if they were suggestions for tomorrow's work, not commands for tonight's rest. You do not have to acknowledge them, and you certainly do not have to accept them. You can greet them with a gentle sense of detachment acknowledging their presence while keeping your focus on the stillness of your body. If a worry insists on your attention, tell yourself that you are the master of the loom, not its slave. You can choose when the work begins and when the work ends. Tonight, the work has ended. The shuttle is at rest. The loom is silent. This discipline of letting go is not something that happens all at once. It is a slow, gradual opening. It happens in the seconds you take to breathe, before responding to an email that triggered your anxiety. It happens in the moment you realize that your internal critic is shouting, and you decide to simply observe the sound, rather than obeying the instructions. It happens when you stop trying to convince everyone of your worth, and instead allow your actions to speak for themselves, quietly, without the need for constant explanation. It happens when you recognize that you are not a damaged product in need of repair, but a person who is learning how to live in the shifting, unpredictable weather of reality. You can care deeply about your work, your people, and your future without needing to possess them with your thoughts. You can commit yourself to your goals without sacrificing your peace. There is a way to move through the world that is light, responsive, and grounded, a way that doesn't rely on the heavy, clenching force of control. It is the way of the gardener who understands that they are only a part of the process, that they can influence the growth, but they cannot dictate the timing of the seasons. You are the gardener of your own existence. You can clear the weeds, you can offer water, and you can tend the soil, but you can also trust that the earth knows how to grow what it needs to grow. Even if tonight you are still feeling the pull of the shuttle, even if the patterns of your worry are still spinning, that is okay. You are not failing to be peaceful. You are simply practicing the art of returning. Every time you catch your mind trying to control the world, every time you notice that you are holding your breath, and every time you choose to release that tension and return to the present moment, you are deepening your sanctuary. You are building a home for your spirit that does not require you to be anything other than exactly who you are in this moment. You have spent so long identifying with the builder, the one who manages, the one who executes, and the one who sustains the structure. You have forgotten the one who watches, the one who feels, and the one who rests. The watcher is always there. The watcher is the quiet space behind the thoughts, the empty room that contains the loom. You can return to that space anytime you want. You do not need to go anywhere to find it. You do not need to wait for a better day to access it. It is as close as your own breath, as constant as your own beating heart, and as silent as the darkness that surrounds you now. Maybe the peace you're looking for is not found by finishing the work, but by letting the work be unfinished for a little while. Maybe the security you crave is not found by building a thicker wall, but by opening the door and realizing that you can withstand the cool air of the unknown. Maybe the love you are reaching for is not found in the approval of others, but in the acceptance you offer to your own messy, beautiful, and ongoing life. These questions are not meant to be answered with a rational thought. They are meant to be felt, experienced, and lived in the quiet moments of your evening. They are the seeds of a new way of being. And tonight, you can simply let them rest in the soil of your awareness. As you continue to sink into the bed, let the weight of your day slide away. Do not try to carry it with you into the silence. You have done enough. You have carried enough. The world will be waiting for you when you wake, but right now, the world has no claim on you. You are free to inhabit the quiet. You are free to exist without purpose, and you are free to find rest in the stillness. You are a person who is learning how to be. And that is more than enough. For tonight, the loom is finally quiet. The shuttle, with all its heavy responsibilities and its frantic, clicking rhythm, has been set down on the worn wooden bench. You can feel the change in the air of the room. The intense, focused energy that has been defining your day is cooling, transforming into something soft and indistinct. The threads you were so concerned about, the ones you felt had to be arranged into a perfect, impenetrable shield, are simply resting now. They are loose, they are unburdened, and they are beautiful in their own unfinished state. You do not have to check the tension anymore. You do not have to ensure that every single strand is accounted for or perfectly aligned. The pattern of your life is not a fixed, final object that demands your constant, weary supervision. It is a living, breathing landscape, and it will continue to weave itself, even while you are deep in the embrace of sleep. Take a long, slow breath and feel the way it travels through the space where the loom used to be. It is not meeting any resistance. It is moving through the open air, unhindered, unhurried, and perfectly at peace. Each exhale is a release, a gentle letting go of the need to be the architect, the guard, and the weaver, all at once. Your shoulders feel heavier now, sinking deeper into the soft support beneath you, as if the very idea of holding yourself upright has become a distant, unnecessary memory. Your arms, which have been holding the shuttle for so long, are relaxing, their muscles softening until they feel like silk ribbons draped across the sheets. The tension that was living in your jaw is dissolving, pulled away by the gentle, steady rhythm of your own heart. Everything that happened today, all the complexities of the work, the unexpected arrivals of the mountain mist, and the persistent, nagging voices of self-judgment can be left on the workbench. They do not need to come with you into this dream space. They are not required for your survival, and they are certainly not needed for your rest. You have spent your energy trying to turn them into something meaningful, something defensible. But tonight, they are just loose threads. You can leave them exactly where they are. They will be there in the morning if you decide they are worth picking up. But for now, they are only shadows in the corner of the hut. The door is open, the air is cool, and the night is vast enough to hold all of your unfinished business without ever needing to categorize it. You are not the weaver. You are the space that holds the weaving. You are the quiet, expansive consciousness that notices the shuttle moving, that feels the vibration of the threads, and that understands the nature of the mist. That space is not affected by the patterns. It is not worn down by the labor. It is as clear and as undisturbed as the surface of a deep mountain lake. At midnight, you have been looking for peace in the patterns, but the peace was always in the space itself. It was in the silence between the clicks of the shuttle. It was in the emptiness of the air that allowed the mist to move through. You are returning to that space now. You are sliding into the quiet, dark water of your own awareness, where nothing needs to be explained, justified, or perfected. Feel the darkness in the room as if it were a soft, dark blanket being draped over your shoulders. It is a friendly, protective presence, a boundary that marks the end of the day's labor. The world outside is moving. The wind is turning the pages of the forest, and the stars are shifting in their slow, silent orbits. But you have reached the edge of your own responsibility. You have done enough. You have lived enough. You have thought enough now. It is time for the mind to mirror the stillness of the mountain. At night, the clicking has stopped. The shuttle is still. The threads are resting in the dim light, and you are free to let the images of the day drift apart, losing their edges, fading into the gentle, velvet dark. There is a profound, deep relief in knowing that you do not have to solve the puzzle of your own life before the morning. You can trust the process. You can trust that the threads will remain, that the loom will be there, and that you will wake up with the capacity to greet whatever the new day brings. But that is for then. Tonight, the only thing asked of you is to allow your breath to be as light as a feather, as natural as the turning of the tide. Let your heart beat slow, becoming a soft, distant drum in the silence of your own temple. Every cell in your body is receiving permission to stop holding on, to stop bracing, and to stop defending. You are a human being, and you are part of the great, unfolding mystery of the universe. That mystery does not require you to hold the strings. It only requires you to exist. As you sink deeper into this quiet, notice the way your thoughts have lost their urgency. They are like wisps of steam from a cooling cup of tea, rising slowly and then vanishing into the empty air. You do not need to capture them. You do not need to analyze them. You can just watch them vanish. The room is quiet. The house is still. The world has grown small, focusing only on the rise and fall of your chest, the slow, rhythmic pulse of your own life. You are floating in a sea of gentle, protective silence. Everything is softening. Everything is letting go. The edges of your identity are blurring into the dark, and you are becoming one with the peace that has been waiting for you, patiently, behind every thought you ever had. If you find yourself still holding a thread, or still worrying about the tension, just notice it and then let your hand drop. It is such a simple movement, this act of releasing the past and the future. It is the most natural thing in the world once you realize that you were never the one holding it all together anyway. You are part of the vast, shifting, and beautiful pattern of life, and the pattern is held by forces far greater and far kinder than your own mind. You are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. The night is deep, and the quiet is infinite, and you have finally, truly, come home to yourself. What if the quiet you have been reaching for was not something you had to find, but something you had to stop hiding from?